The man's wife was murdered in front of him, and he kidnapped a diplomat in order to obtain the killer's name. John is a member of the Navy SEALs and had just completed a thrilling rescue mission today. One evening, he returned home and was relaxing in his room listening to music. Just then, the music in his headphones suddenly cut off. Assuming it was a power outage, John plugged in the power source but found no response. He immediately grew vigilant and retrieved his handgun from the cabinet. At that moment, several masked intruders had already infiltrated the house, entered the bedroom, and shot John's wife dead. Surprisingly, one of the killers chose to die voluntarily. John quietly approached the room, quickly shot and killed one of them, and went upstairs to his wife's room and shot and killed another assassin who was coming down the stairs. Upon reaching the upstairs, John encountered the remaining assassin, and both were shot and fell to the ground. The masked man removed his face mask, raised his gun to shoot John, but discovered there were no bullets left, so he had no choice but to leave with severe injuries. John slowly crawled toward the bedroom and saw his wife's lifeless body, which caused him immense pain. Fortunately, he was rushed to the hospital in time. After several days and nights of emergency treatment, John managed to survive. In order to avenge his wife, John has been diligently working out every day, and soon his body fully recovered. Meanwhile, the National Security Agency had already identified the 4 criminals as being sent by Russia. Besides John, even his colleagues who had previously carried out the mission together were also killed. It turned out that their previous mission was supposed to be a hostage rescue operation. They discovered that the targets were not criminals at all, but Russian military personnel. After completing the mission, they even blew up the entire base. However, John was unaware of this. Unknowing of the truth, John became the scapegoat. His superiors understood his pain and took risks to obtain information on 3 of the killers for him. Strangely, there was no information about the killer who had escaped. Karen told John that a diplomat might know his identity, so John went to the embassy. After the diplomat left in his car, John immediately followed him. The next moment, John collided with his car, causing the diplomat's car to get stuck and unable to open the door. Then, John poured an entire bucket of gasoline on the car, stepped back a few paces, and threw a light. The diplomat's car burst into flames. John didn't leave. Instead, he charged into the burning car with a gun. He began to interrogate the diplomat about the identity of the criminal who had escaped. When the diplomat refused to speak, John shot him in the leg. The diplomat finally gave a name. John had no intention of sparing him. After killing him, John got out of the car and waited quietly to be arrested. After being imprisoned, John sensed something was wrong. The prison was filled with Russian criminals, and it was clear they intended to use this opportunity to kill him. One day, the guards told him to come out for a talk. John sensed danger approaching. He tightly wrapped a towel around his hands and took off his clothes and stuffed them into the sink. Turning on the tap flooded the entire cell. Now, John was ready for battle. When the guards rushed in, John acted swiftly, giving them no chance to fight back. Water on the floor made it hard for them to stand, giving the experienced John an advantage. After taking down several guards, John quickly grabbed one by the neck and used him to force the others to close the cell door. Soon, someone in charge arrived, just as John had hoped. He was taken to a secret base where senior CIA officials had gathered. In exchange for what he wanted, they needed to know what information John had gotten from the diplomat. John revealed the name of the 4th assassin, but when they heard the name, they were shocked. This person was supposed to be dead. Then they showed John a row of photos. John immediately identified the killer. After a short discussion, the officials decided to send Navy SEALs to Russia to capture the target. Driven by revenge, John joined the mission. To stay unnoticed, they had to take a commercial flight. Just as the plane reached its destination and prepared for a parachute drop, a Russian fighter jet suddenly appeared. Calling them invaders, it fired missiles. The plane was hit hard and plunged into the sea. Water quickly flooded the cabin. John used a life raft to get his teammates out safely. The team reached the target location and, after a few days of observation, quietly infiltrated the building. But just as they neared the target's room, John locked the iron door behind him while the others weren't looking. He had decided to kill his enemy himself. To his surprise, the man was covered in explosives. Calmly, the man said he had always worked for the CIA. "They're just sacrifices for national interests," he said. "Your whole team will die here too." Then he detonated the bomb. When his teammates moved forward to investigate, they were suddenly hit by a sniper who had been lying in wait. John quickly ducked behind a wall and used a piece of broken glass to locate the sniper. Once he had identified the target's position, John fired wildly at the target while instructing the others to rescue the injured teammate. However, they soon realized there was more than one sniper on the other side. The group quickly returned fire and took advantage of the chaos to rescue the wounded teammate, intending to escape together. However, there were also enemies ambushing at the door, so they had to hide and discuss a plan. However, Russian police arrived at the scene, and the snipers opened fire, killing them. But this outcome was not favorable, as the deceased would be deemed killed by John, potentially sparking a war between the two nations. In such a scenario, they would all perish here, and the evidence would vanish along with their deaths, exactly the objective of the mastermind behind the operation. To help his teammates escape, John went to the rooftop to distract the enemy. First threw a grenade, instantly destroying the police car, and fired wildly at the police below, causing them to become disoriented. The teammates seized the opportunity to drive away. John continued to provide covering fire, but just then the enemies charged forward. John quickly fired his gun, but he could only hide behind cover, and his shoulder was hit by a bullet. In a desperate situation, he decided to take a risk. He first used his pistol to drive the enemies back, then quickly jumped toward the skyline. John placed several bombs in a bag, activated them, and threw them at the enemies, filling the room with smoke. Taking advantage of the smoke, John changed into the enemy's clothes and exited the building, successfully reuniting with his teammates. To uncover the mastermind behind the plot, John decided to feign death, which led him to discover that the Secretary General was the mastermind. John tied him to the car and forced him to reveal the truth. The panicked Secretary General confessed everything. Enraged, John drove the car into the water, and the water quickly submerged the Secretary General. John remained calm, watching him suffocate to death, then quickly retrieved the recording device. His teammates arrived at that moment and rescued him using diving equipment. Afterward, the recording device was handed over to the government, and the Secretary General's conspiracy was exposed. John, having successfully avenged himself, began a new life under a new identity.